This week on the Pro Wrestling Podcast. Brett Favre is suing Pat McAfee over comments made on the Pat McAfee show in regards to a recent scandal in Mississippi. Comedian Marc Maron hosts multiple AEW wrestlers on his podcast WTF this week as he takes the journey to becoming a wrestling fan. Dax Harwood reveals how the real-life animosity between FTR and the Young Bucks got started, and Tony Khan too. Plus, Mandy Rose will rate your what? I'm your host, Seth Grimes, and this is the Pro Wrestling Podcast. What the fuck is up, everybody? Welcome. Come on in to another episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. I am your boy, Seth Grimes, your humble host here as always on a Super Bowl weekend. Everybody's gearing up for the big game. Everybody calls it the big game. I'm not a big sports ball guy. I don't get all the fuss about it. I'm more excited to see was Rihanna performing a halftime show. I'm more excited to see that, what kind of Illuminati stuff she's going to do in the fucking halftime show and all that fun stuff. That's what I'm into it for. And of course, the munchies. I hope you all enjoy your chicken wings and your chili dips and your beers and whatever the fuck else people do on the big game weekend. I'm excited to just talk about some fucking wrestling. That's what I'm here for. But, like I said, I'm not a big sports ball guy. But, speaking of sports ball, we got a pretty big story in the world of sports ball that very much relates to the world of professional wrestling. And that is our top story this week. Brett Favre is suing the shit out of Pat McAfee, along with Shannon Sharp and the auditor of the state, for dragging his good name through the mud. Of course, everybody knows Brett Favre, the everybody's favorite quarterback from the Minnesota, famous for his time in the Minnesota Vikings, right? Brett Favre, the great Minnesota Vikings quarterback. He also spent a little bit of time in the Packers, but everybody really remembers his run with the Vikings. And Brett Favre, he was also a Falcon too, believe it or not. Hey, I know some shit about sports ball. What do you know? I was trading cards in like school and stuff, high school or junior high. Like I was into the cards and stuff, so I know a thing or two, but I don't watch that shit anymore. But I know Brett Favre is awfully pissed off that his good name is getting dragged through the mud, as he has lashed back at the sports media this week, firing lawsuits in every direction to protect his good name. Of course, this goes back to the big scandal in Mississippi from a couple years ago now, but more just seems to be coming out about this. Us in the wrestling world are going to be familiar with this story as it pertains to the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Apparently, there was a fund that the government was putting together that was strictly designated to benefit the poor people, the poor community in Mississippi. And whoever was running this fund here was using it basically as a slush fund to deal out funds to his buddies and cronies all around town and just fund all this shit out of this account that was meant to benefit the poor. Ted DiBiase, of course, famously receiving part of that for his ministries and his son, his children. Just as a quick refresher, check out this clip from about a year ago. Jim Cornette talking about this very thing on his podcast.
Mississippi history.
Oh, God.
Three
when
members
you say it like
Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. I shouldn't pile on Ted DiBiase and his family,
Oh, boy.
But being a proud Mississippian, I'm going to. This next one was sent to cornydrivethrough@gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. I shouldn't pile on Ted DiBiase and his family.
Oh, boy.
But being a proud Mississippian, I'm going to. From their involvement in the biggest embezzlement scheme in Mississippi history,
When you say it like that, it sounds unsavory.
3 members of the DiBiase family have been ordered to pay back stolen welfare money to the state. Ted DiBiase Jr. must repay $3.9 million plus interest.
Ouch.
Ted DiBiase Sr. must return $722,299 that his Christian ministry received. And finally, Brett DiBiase has to repay $225,950. What are your thoughts on the DiBiase family stealing millions in welfare money from the state of Mississippi?
Oh, come on. I don't... Is stealing it or right the proper word? They didn't, go and knock somebody over the head and pick their pocket. They just misdirected funds from the state that were to be used for poor people for their own ends. That doesn't make it sound any better, does it? I like Ted DiBiase. I've never...
So now flash forward and allegedly, and we'll get to that word here in a minute, but allegedly Brett Favre has been tied to this fund as well, as he was reportedly taking payouts from this fund meant for the poor community of Mississippi. And of course, Brett Favre, a huge celebrity in Mississippi. He's, Mississippi's favorite son, as you would imagine, and very heavily involved in the community there and very friendly with everybody. And he had this schmooze deal where he got funds donated, allegedly, to help his daughter's school build a whole fucking volleyball stadium that, she's a volleyball player. So daddy got a stadium built for her to play volleyball in. And a couple other donations. Apparently he came up with a fucking cream that you could just kind of, rub on your head and it would relieve concussion pain or something. I don't know. I didn't research it, but mysterious funding came from that as well. And also, on top of that, he was taking payments from somebody from somewhere for speeches that he never actually went and did. So lots of money getting moved around. And Brett, of course, denied all of this, saying that he didn't know where this money was coming from. He didn't know it was coming out of this fund meant for the poor. And, of course, all of that was thought to be bullshit, though nobody knew for sure. And then now text messages have later come out tying Brett Favre, or at least, putting him in more hot water, if you will, making the case look worse for Brett, where he's asking in these text messages about, will the media find out where this money's coming from? Now, his attorneys have already come out and they're fighting this and they're denying this, but it's not looking good for Brett. And this has caused the sports media world to kind of talk about it on their show. And now Brett has gone on the offense, and he has filed lawsuits against 3 of the biggest offenders of this, I guess, was the auditor who found this shit in the first place. He's getting sued. And then Shannon Sharp, apparently, he has some kind of a show of some kind. He played for the Packers, too. He played with Brett Favre, right? So... right, that was Shannon Sharp, right? I know there was 2 brothers. There was Sterling Sharp and Shannon Sharp. Pretty sure Shannon was a Packer. And then there was, and then Pat McAfee, unfortunately, got roped into this. So first I'm going to play you a clip of some of the reactions that Pat McAfee had on his show, some of the things that he had said that were causing Bret Hart to claim was defamatory and what he's suing for. Then we're going to go ahead and move into Pat McAfee's response to the lawsuit itself. Check out these clips.
Brett Favre, AJ. Brett Favre.
What now?
Your former teammate. Bro, I think we're going to be able to say what now for a while now, because this is what I think had happened. Now, it is alleged. This is all allegedly. but it is alleged that 2 companies that Brett Favre was a part of rounded up some money, I believe, from the welfare fund of Mississippi to kind of build a business around concussion cream that was not effective, I guess, is what also was being alluded to, and something else in the medical department. What I think is being alleged in the grander scheme here is you're talking about bad guy, finding out that there's a plug that you can get to. And in 2020, I believe 2 people pleaded guilty. The head of the welfare fund, and Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, and also the head of the nonprofit whatever in Mississippi. These 2 people in 2020 pled guilty to fraudulent schemes.
Yep.
So I think what had happened was Brett Favre was introduced to these people who had control over the welfare fund and over the nonprofit part of the Mississippi government funds. And their conversation was, hey, we have access to, they're saying like $20-30 million. We have access to this money that's supposed to go to the welfare fund. We can figure out, so donations to schools, business investments, because we can market that we're investing in the fund, so we're trying to grow the fund, but we just so happen to be investing in businesses that are owned by friends of ours, let alone any other money that was potentially going out. There's a lawsuit for $20 million plus against this group. So we're not just talking about small amounts of money here. We're talking about a scheme in which the person that was running the welfare fund in Mississippi had access to the fund and was divvying it apparently to friends and businesses. This is like classic why everybody trusts nobody anymore. This is people in positions to help people, fucking people over blatantly and deliberately, allegedly, obviously, in this whole thing. And Brett is just one of like 38 names that is listed in this entire thing. And it is all bad, AJ. It is all bad. I mean, it is not good at all.
In other news tonight, former football star Brett Favre is suing state auditor Shad White and 2 sports broadcasters, Shannon Sharpe and Pat McAfee. Favre alleges defamation in his filing in Hinds County Circuit Court. He is citing White's criticism of his involvement in the state's multi-million-dollar TANF fraud scandal.
I'm getting sued by Brett Favre.
What?
Yeah, we made it, boys. Hey,
You arrived.
Take a bow.
let's raise our drinks.
Sure.
When we started this little show in the basement of a house that certainly was haunted,
Yep.
and the mics rarely worked, and we talked for an hour and a half on numerous occasions and found out that we weren't recording. This show has grown so much that we're lucky to be live from Radio Row. We're lucky to have a little bit of say in sports. We're thankful that we have the opportunity every day to be a part of the sports media world. And I guess whenever you get a little bit too big, you fly a little bit too close to the sun.
That's right.
I'm getting sued alongside Shannon Sharpe and an auditor from Mississippi by Brett fucking Favre.
Wow.
Man.
Brett Favre suing me in a defamation lawsuit saying I defamed his name to try to earn a profit. With this, obviously, I believe comes discovery and depositions and all these other things. So I would like to let the New York lawyers that wrote me 2 letters before this thing got announced. First letter was, we would like you to go back and erase every single video that has Brett Favre's name mentioned in it from your YouTube library, your Twitter library, and everything else. This is a warning shot, pretty much. So I looked at that. I said, that is hilarious. Of course we're not doing that. Put that down, move on with my life. Then a few days later, just a few days ago, actually, you have until Wednesday, okay, this Super Bowl week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, to issue a public apology to Brett Favre and also to erase all of the video in your catalog that involve Brett Favre's name. That is 8:30 Wednesday. So my wife read that to me because I was here. She was not here yet. And I immediately started laughing because my wife understands I'm one of the worst apologizers in history. It's tough to get me to do it. It is. It's very difficult. So now I had a deadline, 8:30. I was planning on doing it.
Yeah.
We played pickleball.
We did. It happens.
Flew right through
Oh, I'm sorry.
do you
I just
do?
learned about a drop shot. Oh, I'm sorry. I just learned how to serve with like a wicked topspin on it. And I got caught up. That timeline came and went. And all of a sudden, I'm getting sued. I would like to let everybody know the quotes that were in that lawsuit were certainly accurate. But there's one word I believe that was said often on this particular program, if you were to watch it all, And that would be allegedly.
That's right.
Allegedly, obviously, in this whole thing. Our job is to report the news. Allegedly, what was going on down in Mississippi with Brett Favre, the man who is suing me for money and for defamation, was being reported on this particular program because we owe the sports media world our coverage of it. We take our job seriously as journalists. We had to cover that situation, and we certainly said allegedly. And a lot of people are wondering how my lawyers are going to handle this. You know it. I ain't got them. So let's ride this fucker. I'm excited to see how it goes. I'll see you in court, pal.
Now, you'll notice because news broke for the Brett Favre lawsuit on Pat McAfee before Pat McAfee responded on his show. So I was already reviewing clips for this segment and kind of putting this segment together before McAfee even responded to this. And I was already going to argue because it's clear as day in those segments. If you go back and listen, I'm not going to re-clip it out for you, but if you caught it or if you go back and listen, he does clearly say at least a couple times in what I've watched, allegedly. I've never heard Pat McAfee talk about Brett in any of the videos that I watched about it, and I did go back and review the different clips. Now, I didn't sit and listen through multiple shows of his, but there are several clips of him talking about this, and in all of those clips, it's allegedly. Now, he is going off of the news that's being reported, and he's talking about the news that's being reported. And you can't have a sports show and not talk about what's going on in current events in the world of sports. And Brett Favre is a big fucking deal in the world of sports. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, right? So he's going to get that attention from the sports media. Shannon Sharp and then Pat McAfee included. Pat seems overly joyed about this. At least that's the face he's putting on for the show. Pat's funny as fuck. I am endlessly entertained by Pat McAfee. I think he's absolutely brilliant and effortlessly brilliant in his presentation of just his character. It's just him. It's just who he is. And it jumps to life on the screen and on the microphone, and he's fantastic at what he does. He's brushing us off. I ain't got a lawyer. I'll represent myself. I don't care. He's like, I'm pretty sure I said allegedly and everything, and he certainly did. I think it'll be hard to find him saying anything in his show that is outright defamatory to Brett. Now, this is defamation is very hard to prove. Not only do you have to prove that they were just outright recklessly defaming you, but you also have to be able to prove damages. Now, this will certainly be damage to Brett Favre's reputation, so I think they might be able to get that proven. But to show, it's clear as day. McAfee has said allegedly in everything, and he knows what he's doing. He's smart. It's the same thing I would do too. If you're going to speak on something that hasn't been proven or ruled in court yet like this, they're allegations. Innocent till proven guilty. I stand by that. As bad as it looks for Brett, you gotta let the courts decide and play things out. But you can't have a sports show if you're Sterling Sharp or you're Pat McAfee and not talk about the Brett Favre situation, especially as the plot thickens. And look, I pulled news clips too from different news stations talking about these texts and stuff. So this isn't just alleged rumor shit. This is being covered by major shows. Now, I didn't plug that in because I figured with Pat McAfee's reaction to this, I would center it more on the Pat McAfee show specifically than just, the overall case for Brett. But all that information's out there. There's lots linking him to this scandal in Mississippi, and Brett's fighting it, and he's out there actively on the offense about this thing. But at the end of the day, you can't blame people for talking about it, as long as they're slipping in that allegedly, because we don't know until the courts sort it all out. Only God and fucking the court system will know what the truth is in this thing. And, McAfee, by all accounts, and look, I'm not an expert. I'm certainly not a legal expert, but I'll tell you what I am. I'm a journalist. I'm a podcast journalist, goddammit. And I also have a journalism degree. And in journalism, you're not barred from writing about this kind of shit as long as you are careful with your wording. Allegedly covers your bases. You are saying that people are alleging. That's what allegedly means. So here is the story allegedly. People are alleging that this is a thing that's happening, and that's fair fucking game, especially on a news show. And it pisses me off as a journalist, as a podcaster, as a YouTuber, as a guy who's just all for free speech and anti-censorship. I think it's bullshit that you can't fucking people. Look, I guess I'm going a little bit too far there, because the use of allegedly should be cut and dry. But I also get you can sue a ham sandwich, they say, if you want to. Doesn't mean you're gonna win, but you can. And this is more than just a lawsuit over defamation. This is a lawsuit to protect Brett's image, a way for him to go on the offensive. For one, they sent, as you saw in the clip there, they sent cease and desist to McAfee, and I'm sure, Sterling Sharp got him and all that too, or Shannon Sharp, whatever, the guy, the football guy. So they got the cease and desist. Maybe it was in hopes that they would just get this to go away. Pat McAfee obviously isn't scared of it. He's wearing it as a badge of honor. We made it to the big time now, boys. Let's celebrate. You know what I mean? He don't give a fuck. At least on camera, he doesn't give a fuck, because he feels his bases are covered, and I feel like they are too. I think this is more of a way that for Brett to protect his image and just kind of go on the offense and try to maybe make some of this stuff go away, or just at least make himself, if he just sits back and takes it all, then that makes him look worse than him coming out and saying, hey, fuck you, you guys are ruining my character. I get where he's coming from with that. So it's at least worth a try, but I think Pat's going to be just fine in this situation. As for Brett, I don't know. I think it'll be for the courts to decide. I think the hang up right now is that Brett's got texts with the person that's already pled guilty. So look, the person that was responsible for this fund, and I believe his aide too, both pled guilty and are serving multiple. The head of this fund is serving like 30 years, or was sentenced to 30 plus years for this scandal. They're using fucking taxpayer dollars meant for the poor to give out to their fucking homies around town. And, Ted DiBiase was a part of that. His son, especially. Ted DiBiase owes like maybe $700,000. I think is that what was said in Cornette's clip. But Teddy Jr., almost $4 million. Ouch. Oh, I don't think he made that in wrestling. That's going to be a tough one. Look to see him back out on the indies trying to pay off his fucking his debt to Mississippi. But look, Brett can say, I didn't know where it was coming from. And the texts were with the aide of this office. So like it was like a direct contact to the guy managing this fund, But certainly Brett is at this point, the argument on his side is that this was more of Brett just not wanting, because he's a very wealthy football player, doesn't want anybody in the media to catch wind that he needed help to get this facility. I don't know if that'll stick, but look, it's not for me to decide, and I've ranted about this enough because I'm not a sports ball guy. But Pat McAfee, a wrestling guy, good old member of our wrestling community as the commentator for SmackDown. And, of course, this ties back to the $1 Million Man. So it is definitely in the wheelhouse of professional wrestling. And we'll keep an eye on this if anything develops. But I think, for the most part, Pat is right to kind of just be laughing this off at this point, because it's going to be very, very hard to prove defamation against McAfee, or that he had ill intent, or that he was trying to hurt Brett, or that, just that allegedly is going to protect him all the way through. So that's my 2 cents about it. But hey, if I got anything wrong, if you're more of a legal expert on this, or if you know anything else, just want to contribute in any way, go ahead and leave your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next. Seth Rollins was on the Pat McAfee show this week, chatting with Pat very much in character about his upcoming Elimination Chamber match, gunning for that U.S. title again. I don't think he should be in the U.S. title picture. I think it makes him look lower again. It's like a drop down. Even if he's not going to be competing for a world title anytime soon, he can still be perceived as a world title talent by just not wrestling for a lower level belt. He's in personal feuds until he can be in a world title picture again, I think. But that's just a sidebar, We're talking about this Pat McAfee show appearance with Seth Rollins. Very much in character. I love when wrestlers do interviews in character, because they still tone it down and they mix in a lot of real answers, but they're still got that element of the gimmick in there with him. And Pat McAfee is amazing for this. He was fucking with Seth the whole time and kind of pushing him and playing with him and just leaning into the whole character work and that whole experience of it. And I loved it so much. And it was in this particular clip right here, speaking of leaning into it and doing all the character work, where it seems absolutely obvious, if it wasn't from Logan Paul eliminating Seth Rollins at the Royal Rumble, that we are absolutely heading to a Seth Rollins versus Logan Paul match at WrestleMania, as they started to build more of the foundation for that in this clip right here.
You were in there.
I was.
And then you got dumped on your face by Logan Paul.
Oh, no.
Oh my God. Logan grabbed you by the ass and said, "Get the fuck out of here, dude." That's what Logan Paul did. He's been remarkable. Yeah. Logan Paul has been absolutely remarkable. Him and Ricochet did that slingshot cross body in the middle of it. He
Hell
was
of a collision.
Still able to eliminate Seth Rollins after that. He had a chance with Roman over there at the Crown Jewel. Put on an incredible match. Thought he was going to be Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
And now he's just dumping you. I was like, Logan has been amazing.
So you're a Logan Paul fan. You're on the Logan Paul bandwagon.
Well, I think it's hard not to just respect what he has done. I mean, he's unbelievable. He came in there just, how about when he selfie? Oh, my God. He was up on the top. Seth, I see you go up there before. He was up on the top with a selfie. Hey, Seth. This is what he did.
Yeah.
Boom.
Frog splash.
With the camera on him. Bang.
Wait. So all of us who've come off the top rope before, it's not as special because we just didn't have a camera pointed at our own stupid face.
Oh, you got to do Stu's job, too. Stu's cameraman there. Yeah.
We have people whose job it is to shoot us and make us. I don't need a selfie to make myself look good.
It was cool, though.
It was so cool.
It was so cool. It was so cool.
The guy doesn't care about nothing but himself, man. Whoa! He doesn't care about nothing but himself.
Brother.
Look, I can respect the hustle, all right? I respect the hustle. I really do, because it takes hustle to get where he's at and to get the opportunities that he's got. But at the end of the day, it's about passion. He like, no one's just going to suit up and play NFL football because they're a social media superstar, right? They're going to get creamed. So he's going to step into my world, and he's going to get creamed. And if you want to contribute and you want to give back to our industry, you're a fan of it. You're a fan of it. You love it, right, Pat? Yeah. You're a fan of it. You love it. You give back to it. You talk about it any chance you get. You put it over.
Hell yeah.
You love it. That's not him, dude. That's not him. He's in it for himself. He's in it for himself. He's in it for his own gain. So I don't want you a part of my business if you're just going to leech off of it and you're going to take from it. Great if you're going to come and you're going to help out and you're going to make everything as good as you can. But if you're going to come and you're going to do it for you, and look, I can only judge based on what he's done in the past, his own history, because that's a foretelling for the future. That's why I don't like the guy. That's why I don't dig the guy. And he's going to go rub it in on social media. He's going to talk his talk, but he don't want to say nothing to my face.
What?
He don't want to say nothing in my face.
That
man.
doesn't sound like Logan.
Oh no, it doesn't sound like Logan. Yeah, right. He of course not. With that,
He fought Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
right? Fought
He
Floyd
boxes.
Mayweather.
Oh!
Saves your match.
right.
I thought this was so fucking funny when Pat gets up on the desk and he's like, Seth, hey, Seth, look, Seth, this is what he did. And Seth's like trying to ignore it the whole time. He's like, yeah. And Pat's just being such like an annoying child. Just, no, look, up here. This is what he did. He does that in the commentary booth too, where he'll just stand up on the table, and it's great. I love that energy. He does that while he's talking too. He's one of the few hosts where he'll just stand. Must have just a ton of like ADD energy running through him, right? Because he just stands up and talks most of the time. He'll do that at the commentator table too. He's great. His personality is fantastic, and the way him and Seth were playing off of each other in this interview, I love when these kind of interviews happen, because Seth it's a shoot interview. It's a normal interview. Seth is keeping it realistic, but he's blending just a little bit of that character work in there, He's looking obnoxious, and, Pat made fun of that too, which is great. I think what did he say? You look like an asshole in the interview. It's very funny shit. But Rollins, and you almost half wonder, is Rollins mixing in some truth with what he's saying about Logan? Because now this will be the second one. I covered this a couple of weeks ago, where John Morrison on the Insight podcast with Chris Van Vliet talked with him, and I have a clip of that in my back catalog if you want to check that out, where Morrison kind of questions Logan Paul's passion for wrestling, how he doesn't really talk about it when he's outside of wrestling, that he's just kind of using it to benefit him. And that was kind of the same thing that Rollins was echoing here. And we know Rollins from also a couple weeks ago when he said what he said about CM Punk, that Rollins isn't afraid to bite his he won't bite his tongue with things. He'll just tell it like it is. He's not scared. He's got enough clout to do that too. Nobody's gonna spank him in the back anymore. He's Seth freaking Rollins at this point, right? Especially being married to Becky. He truly has they are a power couple in the company. They have sway. So hopefully he doesn't really. I addressed this with Morrison, and I'll push back a little bit here too. No, Logan's not out there just representing WWE 24/7. He's out there trying to push Prime. He got that deal with the UFC. He's got his YouTube channel or his podcast, all that. Logan is his own brand. He's not WWE for life, but I do think he has a passion for it. I think he shows it just by being in the ring and contributing as much as he does and giving as much to it. Like, he really puts effort into it. He trains hard for the matches. He takes the big bumps. He's physical. He's not afraid to get physical or get hurt. And look, he has wrestlers on his podcast often enough. Not all the time, but it's not a wrestling podcast. But he's mixed them into the mix pretty regularly now. And, they'll talk about it on the show from time to time, especially, anytime after the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble got a big spotlight on his show, and that gets a whole nother viewership than, WWE listeners will normally listen to. So the more that audience is exposed little by little to the outside world of professional wrestling, the more a couple of them might get curious and get drawn in. I think Logan has a passion for it. I think it's a bit unfair to say that he's being selfish about the wrestling business and he's just using it to project himself. I would like to think that that's character work by Seth Rollins. I would like to think that he's just building the storyline, and that's probably is what he's doing. But we did just hear him shoot on CM Punk a couple weeks ago, and though he did it in his character, it certainly seemed pretty much like a shoot, if you ask me. So it'll be interesting to see, but they're clearly building up to this now. I think this is absolutely the direction they go. I think this leads to Rollins probably being a guest on Impulsive at some point, and when he is, we'll certainly cover that here. And, probably some kind of confrontation. I don't know why, like I said, I don't know why Seth is involved with the U.S. title right now. Unless the idea is to give him the U.S. title and then if they think they need the United States title to be on the line in the match between Seth and Logan. I certainly don't think they do, though. I think that's a marquee match as it is without the belt. So I think it just makes Seth look less than by even being in that mix. But, hey, that's just me. You know what I mean? I'm certainly excited to see it. I know at least rumors were the initial plan was Logan Paul versus John Cena. I would really love to see that match, too. But it looks like just with Cena's availability for it, he wasn't really going to be around to practice much, which Logan very much needs to practice as still basically being a celebrity wrestler. Though I think he's earning his wings pretty quickly, Some celebrities have taken to it well. Bad Bunny gets a lot of praise, but I think he's more going through the motions of it. But I think like a Stephen Amell is a great example of a celebrity that just got bit by the pro wrestling bug, and it's kind of in his blood now. And I think like he's had enough matches and enough experience where I think Stephen Amell is, you could say he's a worker. I don't know, not experienced or anything like that, but I think I think he deserves to be called one of the boys. I do. And I think Logan Paul's there. I think Logan Paul has, he's shown that he's willing to give his all for this. And I think that deserves that respect. And he's done it enough times. It wasn't just a one-off. It wasn't just to promote something. He's going to probably keep coming back. He loves it. He clearly loves it. The way he talks about it, he loves it. So to say he's not passionate about wrestling, I think is just disingenuous or uneducated. Give him a little bit more credit. But hey, he's a natural heel and he's kind of a douchebag. So I get also people wanting to be like, boo that man. Fuck everything he does. He's going to get the Miz treatment where, oh, you don't belong here, even though he's been here for longer than everybody else in the entire locker room at this point. Miz still gets he's pointed to as that real world guy, Miz, so some people will just never live that kind of shit down, apparently. So, but hey, man, Seth Rollins, Logan Paul, it's going to be a hell of a fucking match. And if this is any indication to the build-up, I think we're in for a good build-up on this, too, where they can kind of play off that realism. And Seth can kind of challenge Logan on, how dedicated is he to pro wrestling? How loyal is he? How passionate is he? We're going to find out. It's going to be fun. I'm excited to see it, and I'm glad Logan's coming back for Mania. So there's a very fascinating podcast I think every wrestling fan needs to go listen to and kind of make it their priority to put it on their listening list for some point this week. As Marc Maron, the stand-up comedian and actor who was in Glow, wrestling fans might know him from that. And he has a very famous podcast called WTF where he has several celebrities on. He is one of the biggest podcasts in the world, and he's got a very eclectic, wide range of listeners that are not wrestling fans. But you know how this wrestling world works, man. People that love it fucking love it, and they come in all shapes, sizes, and places. And Marc Maron's producer, longtime producer since back in the radio days, apparently is a giant Marc, like the Markiest of Marcs, like all of us, like knows all the details and shit, and can quote you the stuff. So he's a big fan, and he is more of an AEW guy than a WWE guy. And they kind of came up with this idea, long story short, for Marc Maron to learn something new, to discover something new, for him to find other things out in the world that maybe he hasn't been open to before. And he was part of this Glow show, but he never really took the time to learn much about pro wrestling. He's interviewed wrestlers before, but never really thought more about wrestling than it was this fake fighting shit, right? That's what most people outside of our little wrestling bubble universe think of when they think of wrestling. That's why like a Joe Rogan is so dismissive of it. As much as he knows and likes and respects wrestlers, and he gets that these guys are tough and stuff, but at the end of the day, he fundamentally looks at it as fake fighting bullshit. Or UFC's real. Why would you watch the fake stuff? Like the brain does not comprehend what wrestling actually is. And that's why this podcast with Marc Maron was so important, because his producer and Marc kind of came up with this idea to teach Marc the business of pro wrestling as a fan, and not just like as a fan, like, oh, you know, this is fake fighting and this is what they do. But he kind of took him inside, deep dive, the psychology of wrestling, the why behind the what, the showbiz aspects of it, the characters, the personalities, and all of that. And as part of this podcast, Marc Maron was invited to go be backstage at the Dynamite that was recently in LA. And he did a series of interviews with professional wrestlers and Tony Khan as well. So I'm going to play you a couple clips of those, and we're going to kind of analyze each of them in order here. I want to walk you through this. And I'm only going to play a little bit of it because I really want you to go check this out, because it's endlessly fascinating watching somebody that's not a wrestling fan learn the business, like really learn it, go deep into it, and get that appreciation for it. Check out this first clip with Chris Jericho talking with Marc Maron about the wrestling business.
Before watching it with Brendan, it wasn't that I judged it, because I talked to a lot of wrestlers. I understand that it's an art, and that it's a performative art.
Right.
But like, I didn't really believe that I'd necessarily get past the knowing that it's not really about whether it has to be convincing.
Sure, it has to be good.
Yeah, but you know that there's an orchestration of moves. Yeah. But like, it very quickly just became I became invested in the characters.
Well, and you'll see, like, for example, tomorrow night, my gang, the Jericho Appreciation Society.
Yeah.
I had a match against this up and coming guy, Ricky Starks, who's getting really popular with the crowd. He beat me, and then after he beat me, my gang kicked the shit out of him and threw him through a table and really kicked his ass, right?
Oh, yeah.
So tomorrow night, we're going to come out to gloat about how great we are.
So you guys are the heels?
We're the heels.
Yeah.
And then Ricky will come out, and Action Andretti will come out, and there'll be a little confrontation, which will lead to the next week's storyline. So some weeks you wrestle.
Yeah.
Some weeks you do the storytelling. There's also a huge comedic, ridiculous, preposterous side to it as well, which is something I've always been attracted to also.
Yeah.
I can go have the 5-star match, and I can also do a song and dance routine.
He's breaking down that psychology. This is stuff that we all know as wrestling fans, but to somebody on the outside, it's almost like a revelation when they get that extra added layer of this is the why behind the what, you know? It's not, oh, we're going out to pretend we're beating each other up. It's like we're telling a story here. Yeah, and it was fascinating listening to Chris kind of lay that out. And Marc was engaged, and he was actively participating, and he had his marquee producer there to help him along. But Marc was actively like he was trying to learn more about this, and he would ask whys, and this is what made this so fascinating. And this led to his next interview that he did with the owner of AEW, Mr. Tony Khan, everybody's favorite promoter, right? Booker of the Year, 2 years running. But this was a fascinating part of the interview as well, where Marc Maron was kind of trying to dive into the promoter part of professional wrestling and kind of how that works. And that's what he was getting out of Tony. Check out this clip.
I really wanted to work in sports my whole life, and I've had this great opportunity for over a decade to do it now. My dad, his dream was to buy a football team, and just like I think my dream was to launch a wrestling promotion. And so I got to be a part of that. And for 11 seasons now, I've worked in the NFL and been working on football stats, which is something else I really love.
Wait, so your dad owns a team?
Yeah, my dad owns the Jacksonville Jaguars.
You're doing that as well?
Well, I do football statistics and put together scouting reports based on data and put together information on the draft and our games for the coach and for the general manager. I do that. Also, I'm the general manager and sporting director of Fulham Football Club in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So
That's in the UK. So he's literally he's got a team in Europe, a team in Jacksonville, Florida, and this National Wrestling Federation.
So now is the wrestling like a hobby?
No, not at all. It's a full-time thing. It's like I juggle all this work, but I really love it. And
who does all the writing?
I put the matches together, and I try to work with all the different wrestlers to put their stories together. So I don't hand them scripts. I think that's one of the things that makes the two shows really different. There's writers, and including people like a lot of people that are names in Hollywood have written for WWE, and it's great. And I think, like Brendan said, it's just a different feel of show because you're more likely to get handed a script. When Chris Jericho, who you just talked to earlier today, came to AEW, he told me, he was saying, this is really trippy because I haven't done an interview without a script in 20 years.
It was funny that he asked if this was just a hobby because that's what, like a Cornette listener, for example, right? That's their impression of Tony Khan is this is just his fun. And look, it is. I shouldn't even just say a Cornette listener. Yes, I think Tony sees it as a serious business, but at the end of the day, it's play money, and he's just playing. He doesn't actually care if he wants this to succeed. I'm not saying he doesn't, but does he actually care? The end of the day, or is it just more about having fun doing it, right? So it was fascinating hearing Marc kind of pick his brain on those aspects of it. But that was one of the better Tony Khan interviews. It was shorter, but I highly, like I said, I'm going to keep saying that, I highly recommend you go listen to this because it was one of the more fascinating Tony Khan interviews, and Tony's really good at spewing numbers and trying to put over storylines and all that silly stuff that he always does. But this is one of the I guess just that outside of wrestling perspective brain trying to figure out the why, and not figure out just the why, but figure out the why from Tony Khan. Why, how, what, when. Well, this is where you've seen the Cornette clip, I'm sure, where he's talking about flipping the notebook over. That came from this interview as well. I promise you just need to go listen to it. It's very fascinating. But it didn't stop there. He interviewed a couple other people, which I didn't pull a clip from everything. He interviewed Bryce Remsburg to get the referee perspective of it. And he interviewed some other clown I don't remember the name of. Doesn't matter. But then we got into an interview with his somebody I think he became fast friends with, ironically, and this one was interesting too, with MJF, as it appears that Maron was smartened up that MJF is going to be in character, and but he wasn't smartened up that he needs to put that over with everybody else. He should have been like, and this next guy was a real fucking asshole. But, the first thing that they led with was, and then this next guy, he told us right before we hit record that, okay, I'm going to be the biggest asshole you've ever met, okay? So we're going to be in character once we hit record. I really wish that Maron hadn't said that, but here you go. Here's how that one played out, and a little bit from MJF.
Then we went backstage to the Forum Club to have where there was a kind of sitting area so that we could sit and do some of the interviews, and that was with Max MJF, who is the champion, and we knew he was going to come in and do basically a gimmick interview, in character interview.
It's funny though, he's talking normal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so this is going to stop right when we go on. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the biggest douchebag Jew from Long Island that you ever met.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, when you do this, when you do the matches, I mean, you got bits you do. Right?
Bits.
Well, I mean, what do you call them?
I'll bite people from now and then, but if only
I mean,
it's necessary.
when you chart it out, you know what you're going to open with mostly. Like, as a comic,
Personally,
yeah,
I'm a shoot from the hip type of guy.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I say what I'm feeling. I feel what I'm saying.
But I mean, like with moves, like with actual wrestling.
With the moves, when I'm in there, I have to study my opponent, study their movement, figure out what openings I have.
Yeah.
Is their arm hurt? Is their fucking finger hurt? Is their knee hurt?
Yeah, and that's where you.
Then you got to go for it.
Do you ever use weaponry?
So you're not going to tell anybody this, right?
No, I'm not.
All right,
no.
thank God. So sometimes, if I'm a little worried, I have a ring that I put in my trunks.
Yeah.
And I put it on my pinky.
Yeah.
And I punch the guy out with it when the ref's not looking.
All right.
And it works every time. Mark.
Yeah.
Every time.
So you cheat.
What?
I mean, that's
what are you
part
talking
of it.
about? I think I slightly bend the rules.
All right.
To my advantage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We have to.
You have to.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get hurt.
How
really
was,
do I?
How was your bar mitzvah? Was it good?
Oh, Maximania? Are you kidding me?
Funny enough, I think they bonded, though. I think MJF, I think Maron has a respect for MJF. I think maybe just because of the mutual Jewish heritage, perhaps, and they kind of bonded over that, as you heard. But I think, Maron learned a lot from MJF on the showbiz perspective, too, and how these guys work in and out of character, even during interviews and that sort of thing. And, Maron was kind of almost playing along a little bit too obviously, and I just wish that people, MJF, instead of telling the guy, I'm going to be the biggest asshole you've ever seen in this interview, it would be nice if MJF was just the biggest asshole he's ever seen, so Maron could say, yeah, I had a great time other than that MJF guy, what a dick he was. You know what I mean? And that's how you're supposed to do it, but nobody gave him the memo. And so, at least we never see or hear MJF break character. I think there is a video floating around out there following him around on the indies or whatever, but we don't count that. Nothing's been put out since he's been on our national TVs. But another great reason to go check out this interview, and it taught Marc Maron more about the business. Like I said, just, what a heel is, especially, he got to see it in action, and just it was beautiful. The way that wrestlers are able to work their character into real life, it's fantastic. But we were not done yet. There was yet another, a fourth interview, if you will. This one was with Eddie Kingston. And this one came off of, there was several months ago, Eddie Kingston had a really big article published about him, talking about like his hard times coming up. And this is something that got on the radar of, I think Marc Maron had even said he read that back in the day, but certainly his producer was a big fan of Eddie Kingston, so that was one they wanted to wrangle in. And this was a fascinating interview as well, where we really got to dive in to Eddie Kingston coming up, and what kind of rough times that he had, and especially something that he does now when he goes back out on the indies that it just fucking will melt your heart. Check out this clip.
And how did you get this gig? I mean, how did you?
I talked a lot of shit. I had an independent show finally.
Yeah. After COVID.
Out in New York. Out after COVID. And I just grabbed the microphone one day and I said, hey, Cody Rhodes had a thing going here.
Yeah.
Open challenge.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, Cody, all these guys that you're fighting are kids. I'm a grown man.
Yeah.
All this stuff. And then it caught wind on Twitter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, okay. And then they called me in and they were like, oh, we want to bring you in to wrestle Cody. And the first question I asked was, how much? How much are we getting?
Yeah.
Because the way I didn't look at it like I was getting a contract.
Right.
I didn't look at it as a tryout.
You just saw like a one-nighter?
Yeah. I looked at it like, okay, man, I can pay my mortgage next month, so I'm good to go.
But they signed you.
Yeah. Yeah, I got lucky. I had a good dance partner with Cody, and we beat each other up. And 2 weeks later, they were like, hey, you want a contract? I go, yeah, how much?
And how many matches you do in a week?
Oh, for AEW? It's once a week on a Wednesday.
You don't go out at...
Oh, no, I do. I like doing the independents still.
Yeah.
Because without the independents, I would have went nuts years ago.
So you just like it to do the shows?
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times... well, they already announced it a couple times. I hate it when they do this. I usually will go there and do a show, but I'll tell them, take half my money and give it to a charity that's local.
Right.
And, I tell them not to announce it, just do it.
Yeah.
And they announced it anyway. So, that's what I like to do.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, really? I'm like, look, you guys kept me fed for years.
Right.
When I had nothing, so let me help you back out.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
I don't like being nice, but it happens once in a while.
Well,
yeah, so if you needed any more proof that Eddie was like a real street guy and a real good fucking human being, look no further than that clip right there. That's fantastic. Half of his fucking indie fee goes to benefit some local charity. That's such a good dude. And that's something, like he says, that he doesn't really talk about much. You know, it comes out. People will say it. I actually hadn't heard it, so he probably could have kept his mouth shut on that one. But he had said in the interview that, you know, that somebody else, whoever, one of the indie promoters basically went on social media and talked about that Eddy did that. So apparently that was a public thing. But what a fucking guy, right? What a dude. And, you know, giving back, especially when, you know, I'm sure Eddie's not a millionaire or anything, you know, he's not set for life necessarily. He's only had that big contract for a couple of years. So, but he still finds it in himself to give back. So that's fantastic. And then, you know, just to kind of wrap this segment up here with all these clips, I just thought this was such a fascinating piece of work, piece of journalism, to be honest. This was podcast journalism at its finest. This was a guy, Marc Maron, who knew about wrestling, talked to wrestlers, worked on a wrestling show, but never really thought much more of it than that fake wrestling stuff. And really got a deep dive education in on it, from going to a show, seeing it live, talking to the wrestlers, talking to the promoter, talking to good guys, talking to bad guys, getting an explanation on the psychology of why we do what we do, and then seeing it in action. And just, man, and you know, another thing he was so surprised with in the podcast is he looked at these guys like sports guys were like he always pictured like a MMA locker room or a football locker room where guys are getting psyched up and banging on lockers and just being meatheads. And he's like, no, this was more like going backstage at theater. People are getting into character. They're getting dressed. They're practicing. They're rehearsing. They're going over their stuff last minute. And, you know, he learned so much from just watching the guys in the ring before the show. You know, he talked about how he caught a glimpse of the Young Bucks practicing their fucking ladder match. They're going over their ladder spots in the ring before the show. All of this, it's just a fascinating look at professional wrestling. And Marc Maron, like I said, his podcast is not small potatoes. For him to give pro wrestling that spotlight and expose those kind of details to that many listeners, potential, you know, lapsed fans, new fans, all of that in between. It's just really a remarkable piece of podcast work. So if you are a wrestling fan, seek that out. That's WTF with Marc Maron. And it's just, I don't remember what it's titled, but just fucking a deep dive into AEW. You'll absolutely love it. Well, AEW president and two-time Booker of the Year, Mr. Tony Khan, did a written interview in the sports column for a website by the name of Uproxx, UPROXX. Never heard of it, but they got an exclusive interview with Tony Khan this week, talking all things Tony Khan, of course, AEW, getting into the nitty-gritty of AEW. But it was in this particular section of the article that caught a lot of attention this week, as Tony Khan was talking about the upcoming media rights deals that he has with Discovery Time Warner. Will they remain on TBS or TNT? Are they going to get a bigger deal, or are they going to get a lesser deal? You know, everybody's got something to say about this because of the ratings and such. Let's go ahead and take a look at this interview here. Now, we do not have an audio version of this, so, you know, no video or nothing to play for you. So we'll just kind of take a look at the website here. This is Uproxx here. And it was down in this section over here. We got... As he reflects on the last 4 years and looks towards the future, Khan is bullish on AEW's future. As reported by Fightful, the organization's television's rights deal is set to expire towards the end of 2023. But Khan was careful to characterize AEW's future deal as a media rights deal, instead pointing solely to a new television deal. I expect a big increase in the rights for AEW programs, and we're on a good pace to make a very lucrative deal for the AEW media rights going forward, Tony Khan said. Then he was asked if he was going to launch a streaming site. He said, we've done 174 episodes of Dynamite, 80 of Rampage, and blah, 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 pay-per-views. So we've done hundreds and hundreds of hours of AEW content in our library content. I also purchased Ring of Honor last year, which is a great promotion, blah, blah, blah. So overall, AEW has access to many great wrestling events, including some events that are widely considered to be some of the best wrestling events of all time, which is true. There's a lot of interest in this library, as well as the new weekly content we continue to produce each week. And I don't think there's a lot of demand for, and I do think there's a lot of demand for the library, and it makes a lot of sense for us to try to make that AEW library available to fans all over the world on demand. So there you have it. This mixed with, look, AEW continues to make some big, big moves. They got their deal with ESPN. They just announced. That's Disney company, by the way. They got a deal with ESPN, an exclusive streaming deal with ESPN to stream over in Australia and New Zealand and whatever other. There's another country over there, I think, of some kind, another island nation, perhaps. But they got that exclusive deal over there. I believe they are also got that deal with DAZN to be on streaming in some European countries and that sort of thing. Look, they're making big moves, dude. And this whole media rights thing, I know people love to troll, and people think they get a little bit of information and they let it run crazy, right? People think that ratings, they're all obsessed with the ratings. Oh, AEW can barely get over 1 million. They're not going to get a good media rights deal. Or, ooh, somebody new bought Discovery and there's new management and they're firing tons of people and AEW is going to be on the chopping block and they better be careful. And I've heard it all. I've seen it all. And I've been saying this for this entire time. And I'll say it again here because it's still going around on the internet and it still needs to be addressed. And I guess we, won't know for sure until the media rights deal happens. But I'm going to continue to iterate that AEW is going to get a fantastic media rights deal. They're going to get a raise. They're going to get more money than they're making right now. Why? Because they're still producing fantastic numbers, for one. Whether or not they can stay over 1 million, whether or not Rampage is dying a slow death over on Fridays, none of that matters because they're still ranking high in their demographics, in their time slots, on their days. Dynamite's one of the biggest shows on TV on Wednesday night, if not the biggest, consistently in the key demographics, especially. And it's on every single week, even through the pandemic when nothing was live. Nobody was doing anything live. Dynamite was live. Dynamite was doing live presentations. They have an insane fandom. They found that out over the whole Jay Briscoe censorship thing, and they got schooled with a bunch of fucking outraged wrestling fans and that sort of thing, and they quickly changed their tune on that. But look, I read, I believe it was last week, maybe the week before, I read an interview that was done with the head of Kathleen Finch, I believe her name was. She is the head of the creative over at she's in charge of all the programming that's on TBS and TNT. Let's put it that way. And she's a big fan of AEW. She says she didn't know much about wrestling, but she dived into it to learn everything she could about it, like the fan base and what they like to watch and this and that. And she realizes that they are an insane fan base that they want. That's the kind of shit that they want. That was a clear directive when the new ownership took over. We want to build fandoms. We want to build around fandoms. That's what, and they also want to build off non-scripted television because it's cheaper to produce. Look, AEW is still, as much as they're getting they have a multi-million-dollar media rights deal right now, and they will get an even bigger one. Is that they're non-scripted entertainment still. They're still very cheap to produce compared to like a TV show. They couldn't just go out and produce like a Walking Dead show. That would cost them so much more money than an AEW show. That an AEW that's drawing near the top or the top of the demographic of the entire night on all of TV. And it's still relatively cheap compared to a lot of other different types of entertainment. Sure, they could run reruns over that, but even that can get comparatively as expensive. You know, you think those Big Bang Theory episodes aren't expensive to rerun? Friends gets, you know, paid millions and millions for the reruns still to this day. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal to have live entertainment, to have it on the cheap, to have the insane fan bases. And Kathleen Finch said in that interview that their idea, and that's why they added Power Slap. Power Slap, they said, is an experiment, but they added it because they want to find what else they can put around AEW that will keep some of those wrestling fans around. It's not, hey, AEW doesn't fit with what we're doing, so let's get rid of AEW. It's, hey, we really love having AEW here, so let's see what else we can find that might fit with AEW and put that on TV too. It's creating fucking jobs. It's creating shows. It's a genre that they want to invest in. And live television is a dying art. Sports is it. That's it. And AEW falls into that category too. It's a non-scripted television. It's also sports. And that demands a premium because it's the only thing that you have to tune in live for. If it's a TV show, you can catch the replay. You can wrestling still creates that element. Sports still create that element of you have to see it happen live because people are tweeting it as it goes. You know, there's an ongoing social media aspect to it as it's happening. You know, people don't want to be left in the dark. They don't want to miss out. FOMO, right? They've been consistent. They're not, you know, their rating, despite whether it can go above 1 million or not, has been consistent. There is zero reason for TNT, TBS to want to get rid of AEW, and they won't. And anybody out there that thinks that they will or could or should or, oh, you know, they don't like the violence on TV, shut the fuck up. They're doing just fine. Swearing on the network, Moxley swear. No, try again. AEW is in a very good position, and Tony Khan has all the reason in the world to be bullish on a new media deal. And on top of that, now, my only concern with this next part here is Ring of Honor was not able to land a TV deal. But that is different than a streaming deal. So if they are able to put together a streaming package, look, they have that entire back catalog of AEW. Now they also have the entire back catalog of Ring of Honor. And should they land a streaming deal, mark my words, Tony Khan will seek to go out and acquire the rights to other wrestling promotions. You know, look at Excalibur as a founding member of PWG. He's still heavily, I don't know if he's still an owner or co-owner of it now. There's another Dragon Mask. Is that the other guy? Or there might be multiple. I think Joey Ryan was involved at some point. I don't know if he still is. Regardless, you don't think Tony Khan can acquire the rights to PWG? And before you say, PWG, who cares? Everybody that's on TV right now came from Ring of Honor or PWG or something. If they weren't created in the PC Performance Center through NXT, mark my words, they came through Ring of Honor or PWG at this point. It's, you know, I've talked about this before too. WWE owns a lot of content library, but it's starting to age out. It's starting to, nobody cares about AWA anymore. People are, you know, WCW is still, I guess, you know, appealing to older fans, but even newer fans, like nobody that's on TV anymore came from WCW. People like to see, you know, early Seth Rollins. Let's watch early Tyler Black matches in Ring of Honor. Bryan Danielson, all of these, if he can start to acquire like a PWG, a CZW, if that ever comes up, all of these newer, and they're not so new now, but everybody that's on TV now came through these territories as indies if they were on the independents. So if he can start to tap into that, he's going to create a serious rival streaming site for pro wrestling in general. And if they can just slap that right on HBO Max, the already owned streaming service by Warner Brothers Discovery. And look, they've already talked about too, HBO Max is not going to stay HBO Max because Discovery has their own streaming service too. And eventually the idea is just to move all of their programming onto one new rebranded streaming service. And wouldn't it be fucking great? Hunky dory. They already have AEW on TNT and TBS. Wouldn't it be, all they got to do is add a tab, AEW. Peacock does it just fine. Look at their numbers with WWE. There's already proof of concept that streaming services, that wrestling works on streaming services, and that it earns a premium fee. There's a $1 billion deal with NBC Universal to have the WWE network for 5 years, So you don't think that's a huge proof of concept. Tony Khan said that he pitched AEW to TBS, essentially, to Warner Brothers Discovery as Pepsi to WWE's Coke. We want to be a competing brand. We're not going to be the best, but we're going to be the second best. And we're going to be the first company that's been around since WCW that can afford to compete for talent, for top talent, and can afford to compete in production value and all of those things. Like WWE was always able to stay head and shoulders above like an Impact, for example, or a Ring of Honor, simply because it had the budget that nobody else could touch. Even a New Japan Pro Wrestling, they struggled to try to afford it was a big move for what they paid for Sasha Banks. It was more than they paid for Jericho. They're not in the big talent game. That's almost like a make or break deal for them. That was a hard one for them to pull together. Tony Khan could pull out a contract for Mercedes out of his ass. Mercedes money. She can get a fat contract from Tony Khan, no questions asked. So he's got the money to compete. And that's where look, that's not just going to be in Top Talent either, as I was just saying, with the other media. Let's say a PWG's media content rights ever come up. They're going up for sale. Tony Khan's going to outbid WWE for that, because Nick Khan's not even going to see the value in that. He's not even going to want to pay it. That's why Tony Khan was able to get Ring of Honor. You don't think WWE made an offer to buy that content? But they lowballed it because they figured, nobody else is going to want to buy it. So we're basically just going to get it handed to us. Like when WCW came available, who the fuck else was actually going to be able to do anything with it? Bischoff was trying to put together a deal, but Vince already had all the infrastructure. He already had the TV. TV wasn't coming with it. It was just the library. And Vince had the ability to monetize that library. Maybe they learned their lesson from Ring of Honor and they'll make stronger plays for new content that comes up. But look, at some point, these PWGs, these CZWs, even a GCW perhaps at some point will come up. And yes, these are all lower level indie promotions, but the appeal of these is not just the more wrestling content, but this was also the start of some of your favorite wrestlers ever. This was the home. If they didn't come up through the PC, they came up through some of these promotions. And if Tony has those rights, he's going to have the modern fans' eyeballs and their attention. And he's going to be able to just get more money for that streaming service. So I do expect lots of big things for Tony Khan and AEW going forward. They certainly hit a speed bump with the CM Punk thing that they're still climbing back from now. I think it did significantly slow them down and lower their public opinion, but they're climbing back from that, and they have the money and the production value and the content to be in the game. And I think Warner Brothers Discovery will be all in on AEW, and they would be fools to not. And I will eat the hat off of my head with a bottle of mustard if AEW either gets dropped from Discovery, Time Warner, or they get a lower media rights deal, because it's just not going to happen. You're going to get a big fat raise and be welcomed with big open arms. Well, we've always heard about this supposed beef between the Young Bucks and FTR. This going all the way back to before FTR was even in AEW, when they were the Revival over in WWE. The Young Bucks, the Elite, were taking shots at FTR over Twitter. That's where FTR came from, as a matter of fact. It was fuck the Revival. That's what the whole thing was. And then when FTR went to AEW, they took it back and claimed it as their own. But it's been going on since then, all the way since back then. Then they came to AEW. They had their first match, which unfortunately took place during the pandemic. So didn't have as big of a crowd as we would have probably liked to see for that. They did have their second match as well, and probably should have had a third, but they didn't. And that could be because of some supposed beef or drama between the two going on backstage. And Dax, that's what this podcast was about, this episode of FTR. Dax talked in depth about kind of coming to AEW to work with the Young Bucks and what that looked like coming in. It was very much the beef, the Twitter feud just kind of started just to kind of stir stuff up with the fans, and they hadn't really talked, but when they came to AEW, they got along just fine. They came up with this idea to build to this match, and they had this great match, and then things started to fall apart. And how was Tony Khan involved with all that as well? Take a look at this clip.
Here's the question, though. All that shit you said about you had to do all this stuff to be taken seriously. Have you ever considered the fact that the Young Bucks have the exact same fucking journey? Like, in a lot of ways, like, think about all the shit they get. Think about all the stuff they're told, too small. They can't, they're these spot monkeys, and they don't belong here. They're not prime time. They are dealing with the same thing you're dealing with in the fact that they're trying to prove themselves. And then they see these two WWE guys come in, and maybe they think, these fuckers think they're better than us, but we chose to be here, and they've got the same chip on their shoulder that you have on yours.
All right, man. I like it better when you agree with me. No, I guess I'd never have really. I mean, I know the struggles, and it's well documented the struggles they've had. I know them, but at the time, again, I wasn't mentally mature enough to think about that. I was thinking about the moment, and I was thinking about it in the moment. And
I get that. I'm talking purely in retrospect.
Yeah. But again, at this moment, we were on good terms. There was nothing that had happened, in this moment. We were fine with each other, and we agreed on a lot of things, and we were all working together to make this the biggest possible tag match that the wrestling world had ever seen. That was our idea. So again, like I said, it wasn't an issue with them. It wasn't an issue with the Bucks. It was my issue with Tony at the time. And it was me not realizing that there is more to the wrestling world than Dax Harwood, and I should have. And I was wrong for that. Things weren't going to go the way that we had expected them to go, and maybe the way we were told. I looked back on the angle, and I started thinking, okay, man, I don't know if this is purposely done. Maybe it wasn't. It probably wasn't. But I looked back, and I was like, man, the Young Bucks and FTR was a backdrop leading up, was kind of a backdrop to Hangman Page and Young Bucks. Right. And then, after the match, where, hopefully we could have got a little bit of focus when we were crawling up the stage, and the commentators could have said, they left their wheelhouse, or they left their comfort zone, and they tried to play into the Young Bucks field, and it didn't work. And now the Young Bucks have finally proven that they're the best tag team in the world. What will FTR feel? How will they think? We got, again, Omega and Page coming out, and we were an afterthought. And, thinking about it in 2023 now, if that's what the company wanted, that's okay. Thinking about it in 2020 and 2021, the beginning of 2021,
right.
I was bitter about it and I was upset about it because I felt that we were brought in, given a short title reign, and we were just kind of forgotten about. We were going to be forgotten about.
Where is Dax Harwood and the Young Bucks now?
As far as where we are with the Young Bucks, I don't think I want to delve into that right now, because there's a lot of things that need to be navigated, and I don't want to delve into that now. But also, I think that it is very rare in professional wrestling and nowadays where people can get lost in a story, and people can get lost in heat and what's real and what's not real. If I tell you where we are right now, you're never going to get lost again.
This is a nuanced take here because there's multiple factors to consider. But offhand, I'm starting to kind of think that between the Road Dogg Dax Harwood beef that we covered last week and just kind of seeing the way that Dax talks about wrestling and everything, I'm starting to think that maybe FTR takes themselves too seriously. We talked about this last week with the beef with Road Dogg, and that was kind of Road Dogg's take on this guy, was he just takes shit way too seriously, have a little fun with it. And I think that's kind of the culprit in this beef with the Young Bucks. Now, I say that it's nuanced because I think Young Bucks, the Elite in general, have some blame here as well. I think the Young Bucks like to play good Christian AF boys that are just wholesome and good and friends with everybody, and we're all friends wrestling and stuff. But I think they play games. And I don't think Cornette is just bullshitting to people on his podcast when he talks about stuff that he knows happens behind the scenes. And look, Dax played this very close to the chest, right? He didn't talk about where he thinks they are now. He disguised it as kayfabe, like, I think it'll destroy some of the magic if we do have a third match. If you guys know if we're all friends now or if we really hate each other, I think it's good to keep the mystique alive. With that said, I think that's also an easy way for Dax to say, I kind of want to, even earlier on in the show, which didn't make it into the clip, but earlier in the show, he had said that he's not going to talk about anything today because he doesn't want to get himself into trouble. So he's tiptoeing that line. He doesn't want to kind of show his hand as far as how he truly feels about the Young Bucks or Tony Khan, for that example. It seems to be his beef is as much with Tony Khan as with the Young Bucks. And this could be, maybe why FTR was kind of cooled off on TV, is because Tony Khan maybe looked at that and rightfully so. Dax even said, look, man, if you come into my house when I'm remodeling and you're like, you know what, this living room looks like shit, I would remodel it this way. Well, motherfucker, it's my house and I'm the one paying for it, so I'm going to do it how I want to do it. So Dax, kind of even understands why Tony would be like, bro, you're a little bit too pushy and bitchy for me. And what made me kind of think about this aspect of it too, and I know I'm kind of all over the place on this, but just ride with me here. There was another podcast this week between that Dutch Mantel interviewed Jake Hager. And they're old buddies, of course, We the People. And Dutch asked Hager about what it's like working backstage with AEW. And Hager said that, Tony is pretty chill. He treats everybody cool, and that he wants cool people, or people that he wants a good working environment. He wants a team, is essentially what Hager was saying. He wants to work with people that are cool to work with. He doesn't want the egomaniacs and the drama queens. He's not trying to run that kind of company, and he would rather maybe downplay some stars or forego. Now, this isn't Hager's words. This is me just kind of reading into it. It would appear that if Dax approached him with an aggressive, "Hey, motherfucker, this is how we should be presented, and you suck," that might be true. I consider FTR the greatest tag team on planet Earth. Even when Jay was around, I'd put him above the Briscoes. I'd put him above the Usos. FTR is fantastic. And, they did the best work of their life this past year. So rightfully so in their ego, but as a promoter, I could even see if I was the boss, like, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, I love and I respect your work and everything, but dude, if you're gonna talk to me like that, I'm gonna cool you off for a little bit, and then we'll talk about it then. You know what I mean? And I think maybe FTR just kind of became a little bit too much drama to work with. In the Young Bucks' opinion, but I do think on the flip side, there was probably some politics to be played there too, where maybe the Young Bucks didn't want to do the favor to FTR a third time, or who knows. Hopefully all of this comes out over time. Hopefully even the Young Bucks can speak on this at some point, but because this is the kind of shit that gets my dick hard about wrestling, right? I'm endlessly fascinated by behind the scenes shit. It's my bread and butter. It's funner for me to follow the behind the scenes shit a lot of times than it is what's going on in the ring. You know what I mean? So the stories are just as good backstage, and this FTR Young Bucks drama beef thing seems to be a pretty interesting story. And we may never know, or we might find out as soon as after April when the FTR leaves AEW. I still don't think they will, but because Dax also kind of made it clear that he's starting to see things more clearly, and he's kind of starting to not take things so seriously, or at least recognize, like, hey, this is Tony's company. He's going to use us how he wants to use us. The wrestling world does not revolve around FTR. And I think that was a big part of whatever's going on here is the ego of FTR. And look, they need the ego. You have to have a certain level of ego to be a wrestler, and you have to have an even bigger ego to be the best, or one of the best, and to navigate the politics of pro wrestling. The way that the FTR came from an environment like WWE where it was so oppressive, where they did have to fight for everything. They bring a little bit of that, as soon as they start seeing signs of Tony maybe, holding them down a little bit, or not letting their freak flag fly in the tag team division. Maybe they, that did stigmatize them a little bit of that. They talked about it on the show, the WWE PSD, PSTD or whatever. Post PTSD. That's what it is. WWE PTSD. I'm sorry. My bad. I fucking apologize. Leave me alone. But God, there's certainly something here. But you know what? If Dax is they made it their goal to be just kind of chill and just enjoy whatever they get to work with. Maybe they've kind of come around and everybody's in a good spot right now, and they're just waiting for the next right time to work again. Maybe, perhaps, who knows? But if not, maybe there is some serious beef there that eventually we'll get to explore and find out more about. We definitely got some good insight into it during this podcast with FTR, Dax on FTR here, but it didn't tell the full story, and it definitely leaves a thirst for more. Well, it was just a couple weeks ago where we had that very rare, very good interview that Bray Wyatt did with Ryan Satin over at WWE on Fox, where we were coming hot off the heels of Raw 30, and there was that moment where the Undertaker shared the ring with Bray Wyatt, and he leaned in to kiss him, but instead of giving him a big wet tongue kiss, he whispered something in his ear. And everybody's like, wonder what he said. And there were even memes, all these memes about it, hilarious memes. Lots of good stuff. Ryan asked Bray Wyatt, what did The Undertaker say? What was this thing? The internet's dying to know, and this is what Bray Wyatt said.
But what did The Undertaker whisper to you?
Okay. So, I think everybody kind of can see it for what it was, right? And when something like that happens, like, that's something that no one can take away from me. That moment belongs to me. No one else in the world, in the history of time, ever gets to have that moment. No one but me, right? So what he said was something that only I would have understood, and something that only I would be able to appreciate for when and where it happened. And it was something I never thought would come, but what he said exactly is between me, him, God, the devil, and I'll never tell a soul. I'll go to my grave with it.
I will not tell a soul, Bray Wyatt said. This was personal. This was between me and him. We shared a moment in the ring. This was us. This was just a moment that no one else could ever experience, and I will never tell a soul what The Undertaker told me. Until The Undertaker comes out 2 weeks later and does an interview with Sportsnet and says exactly what he told Bray Wyatt. Or did he? Check out this clip.
Again, I'm always interested in what Bray Wyatt's doing.
Can I jump in on Bray for a second? I don't mean to interrupt the Undertaker.
No.
I was kind of waiting on that. But when you brought up Bray, I know you shared the moment. You tweeted about it. He tweeted about it. As a dude, like, I'm an old school dude. I thought that was a very cool, I don't know, like a passing of the torch almost. Like, any way you share what you whispered to him after that match, like, what I know it was special for both of you guys, and a lot of fans are interested in what that was.
Yeah, no, they're very interested, and I knew that they would be when I did it. But yeah, no, that's the moment that Bray and I shared. There's obviously a huge amount of comparisons between his character and mine. Right. And I think, he's his own guy. He's his own character. I don't think it's fair to him to compare what he does to what I did. In the big scheme of things, obviously it's in the same, it's kind of in that same supernatural, I don't know what genre,
right?
But it's 2023 and he's doing his own thing. But I can appreciate, I can see what he's trying to do, and I just let him know too that my phone's always on, and if he needs to talk to me about things or run things by me, that's cool. I would be more than glad to share my experiences, with him, and hopefully shine some light on maybe questions that he has moving forward. So yeah, it was a cool moment, and it did exactly what I thought it would do.
That's awesome.
So the news, everybody's kind of reporting that this is what The Undertaker told Bray Wyatt, and perhaps that's exactly what it was. Undertaker said, look, this is, and then I told him, but the way that he said that, go back and listen to that. He's like, I told him some things or whatever. And then look, I also, whatever. So to me, the way that he phrased it, it doesn't sound like that's exactly what he told Bray in the ring. Sounds like maybe something that he told him backstage, because what he told him in the ring didn't take that long. It was just something, it was a little quicker. It seemed a little bit more private. I think The Undertaker danced around it here. I think The Undertaker kind of just gave a half-assed answer to this, and then went on to say some of the other advice that he gave Bray. But I could be wrong. I could be interpreting this wrong too. And if that's the case, this is what The Undertaker told Bray, but it doesn't seem that impactful, right? I can't imagine Undertaker would pull him closely in the ring and say, look, my phone is always open to you. Anytime you got any questions, I'm here to answer. You know what I mean? Like, Bray looked genuinely like like, wow, this was, and even in his interview, he was like, this is a moment I got to share and I will never tell a soul. I don't think, if it was just like, yeah, he just told me that he's always here to listen, if I want to talk to him or whatever, like I think there's more to it than this. That's at least, I have a tendency to look into things too deep too, but you just, unless Bray was that moved by, hey man, my phone's on for you. And it could have been a version of that was shorter. Who knows? Nobody will know but those two. But this seems to be the predominant thought that the Undertaker, this is what the Undertaker told Bray that day. But who knows? I'm a little bit more skeptical about that. But I like, Undertaker kind of drew this comparison in this interview that, Bray, he acknowledges that Bray is not a copy of the Undertaker by any means, but he is in a way a continuation of that, in the sense that they're both the supernatural characters. Bray's still certainly doing the supernatural. Remember, I talked about a couple weeks ago during that interview. It's Dollar Store Kane and Undertaker, him and Uncle Howdy with Bo Dallas. You know what I mean? It's Mom, can we have Kane and Undertaker? No, we have Kane and Undertaker at home. That's what this is to me, at least on the surface. But the story hasn't played out yet. But certainly there's that, connection between Taker and Bray on the supernatural front. And Bray is that guy that's going to carry that supernatural aspect of pro wrestling, that supernatural character forward into the future. And, Undertaker's a very valuable source for that. I would be picking his brain very often if I was Bray Wyatt, at least a couple times a year. Every couple of months, every 3 months or so, I'd sit down and give old Marc a call and just kind of talk to him about where my head's at with shit or what the storylines are coming up and how he would approach it. And look, that's invaluable. So even if whether that was or was not what the Undertaker told Bray in that in-ring confrontation that they had, that little passing of the torch moment that they seemed to share, he certainly is passing the torch to Bray Wyatt. And Bray Wyatt's the guy that's going to bring that supernatural element. And I love supernatural in wrestling. I don't mind it. But I'm a supernatural guy, too. Like, I get into ghost stories, and I like horror movies. And so that shit works for me. I'm fine with all of that. If that's not your cup of tea, I can really see why you think this kind of stuff's stupid. But, hey, man, it works for me. I'm fine with it, I suppose. But, even though this Uncle Howdy thing's not really doing much for me, we'll see where it goes. Let it play out. My guess is it's Bray Wyatt versus Bo Dallas at WrestleMania. That would be my guess. Uncle Howdy will be revealed to be Bo. Maybe he'll just stay Uncle Howdy like Kane, and reveal Kane to be Dr. Isaac Yankem, DDS. So we'll see where it goes, but I like it. And I like that the Undertaker is passing the torch to Bray and that he acknowledges that Bray is the successor to the supernatural character after he has retired. Mandy Rose does what now? You say she does what? No. For real? Mandy Rose was on the Sessions podcast with Renee Paquette this week, and it was just us girls, having a friendly little chat about the OnlyFans gimmick that Mandy Rose is on. FanTime, is that what it is? FanTime. It's the same thing. There's people that say it's not OnlyFans. It's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. It's just, as Mandy put it in this interview, doesn't have the same stigma. If you say, oh, I'm an OnlyFans girl, people are like, oh, that's dirty, When you say I'm a FanTime girl, oh, well, she just does it. It's just for fans. It's the same exact thing. And one of the things that's very prominent amongst these cam girls or these OnlyFans chicks is a lot of them will open up their inbox to dick pics.
I would be remiss to not ask you about, because I remember seeing something about it, the rating of penises. Is this a thing? Tell me about this, because I'm dying to know what kind of shit ends up in your DMs, what kind of conversations you're having with people. Like, I need to know this. It's fucking exceptional.
Oh, you caught me for a loop with that one. I was not expecting that. It is a thing. I'll say that. It's definitely a thing. Yeah, it's
the only time
it's
pics
crazy.
can be solicited, right? Because normally you don't want a pic, but here,
I mean, let's
make a game
we
of
all
it.
we all get them in the DMs. So you know what? Might as well make the most of it.
Whatever she's charging, you tack that along with a picture of your cockles and send it to her DMs. You just slide in her DMs with a D pic. And I'm not sure what's appropriate for YouTube, what they're going to boot me off for and what they're not. So I'm just going to dance around this one a little bit. But, you slide into the DMs and you slip her a pic of your guy, and she's going to give your guy a rating. And this is a thing that these girls do. A lot of these girls will do. And this is apparently something she's picked up. So I can only imagine, as Renee said, some of the things that she has seen and the kind of weirdo stuff that comes into her inbox. But fuck, if you're getting paid for it, right? Like, I don't know. Some chicks don't mind. Other chicks get highly offended. Oh, I don't want to see that's sexual assault, brother. And I would say an unsolicited dick pic is a form of sexual assault, right? You can't flash somebody. You can't walk up to a chick and just say, hey, baby, look at this. What do you think? So you shouldn't be able to do that in her inbox either. She shouldn't have to, what's this message from Steve Andrews over in Anchorage, Philadelphia? And oh, shit. Ugh. Get a razor, bro. But yeah, I'm sure, whatever. Look, I'm not a kink shamer, so none of this bothers me at all. Let your freak flag motherfucking fly. I don't care, right? So if she gets paid, if she likes looking at people, I'm sure she doesn't like it, but if she does not mind looking at your dick and giving it a fucking 1 through 10 or thumbs up, thumbs down, or an A-, or I don't know how the rating scale works, but do it, man. Subscribe to her shit. Send her a picture of your piece. And, look, I would say if Mandy Rose gives you a high ranking, that's a badge of honor, right? That's something you can be proud of. Look, some chicks, over your house or some dude or whatever your preference is. And, they're going to town and they're not impressed. You could be like, bro, I don't know what you're talking about, because Mandy Rose fucking rated that shit like a 9. So you just must be delusional, right? You imagine the sad bastard that gets like a 2 from Mandy Rose, though? Like, you're showing her and she's just like, she sends you like a cringe emoji to go along with it. Or like she sends you like a sound sample from The Price is Right. Like, you just fucking fail. Hey man, whatever makes you money. I don't give a shit. If I was a hot chick, I don't know. I don't know if I would do that, because you'd probably, it could be a bit much, I think. But, hey, maybe she's a millionaire, so what the fuck do I know, right? That's part of that. That's her income coming in. I mean, people are probably paying good money, I would imagine. I'm sure that's something you don't charge $10 for, right? That's something, it's got to be at least a 50 spot, right? If I was a chick, I at least $50 to look at a picture of your cock. I don't care, especially if I'm a celebrity chick, right? Because I might have to look at your weird cock, right? If you got a really nice one, it could be pleasurable. I could be very welcome to see that picture. If you get some fucking troll dick in your inbox, it's gonna be an uncomfortable situation. So it's good that people will pay for that, and then it all kinds of evens out, right? I don't even know what I'm talking about here anymore, but apparently it's a thing, and apparently Mandy Rose will do that for you. So go get that. You know what I should have did is I should have went the extra yard for this show, and I should have actually went and got a membership, and I don't know how long the waiting process is. Maybe that'll be a good follow-up. Go join her OnlyFans and get my piece rated, and then put my piece rating up here for all of you to see on the podcast. Don't click the unsubscribe button, please. Don't do it. I'll do better next time, I promise. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments down below. Not that down below, but the comments. Another major health scare for the King of Memphis, Jerry the King Lawler, this time suffering a stroke earlier this week, I believe on Monday. I believe this is the second stroke that Jerry the King Lawler has suffered in his lifetime. He is in his 70s now. I don't have the exact age. It'll be in this clip, I believe, coming up here. Plus his heart attack on national TV. The man died on national TV. This guy seems to kick out of everything. You know, he's got 9 lives. You can't keep Jerry Lawler down. And apparently the stroke, same situation. Jerry Lawler back up and running. Not at 100%, but things are looking good. Check out this clip from Brian Alvarez over at Figure 4 Online with the Wrestling Observer Radio and giving an update on Jerry the King Lawler.
Jerry the King Lawler will make a full recovery following a massive stroke he suffered on Monday. This update from Lawler's Twitter account. 73-year-old still recovering in a Fort Myers, Florida hospital. His speech still limited. Hope for his recovery. News broke Tuesday he'd been rushed to the hospital. Lawler's former commentary teammate Jim Ross tweeted that he spoke with Lawler Tuesday night, and while he was obviously weak, Ross could still understand him despite his affected speech. Lawler's gone through heart issues in the past, suffered his first stroke in 2018, suffered a heart attack during an episode of Raw in 2012 while on commentary, which nearly killed him. He had competed in a tag team match earlier on in the show. And yeah, over the last year, over the last 365 days, I think 12 matches Jerry Lawler had wrestled over the last year. So still active, some, 47 years in this business, something like that.
I'm glad Jerry's doing good. I think we've had enough already for the year, you know, with the Jay Briscoe thing. And then now last week we lost Lanny Poffo, the genius. So let's take a little break on some of that kind of stuff for a while. Let's get some good things in. And, we weren't ready for bad news from Jerry the King Lawler, but Lawler has 9 lives. This fucking guy, I tell you, this guy will continue to kick out and fight. He's a tough old bastard. He is still wrestling to this very day. I mean, not this very day because he's recovering from the stroke, but looks like he's going to make a full recovery, and my guess is Jerry will probably be back in the ring again before the end of the year. Jerry's a tough old bastard, and look, this is what keeps him alive and strong, is continuing to wrestle. You know, once you slow down and you settle in and you start to put your past in the past, that's when you start to die. Jerry's still out there living the present. He doesn't know any better. You can't tell him any different. Jerry the King Lawler is still going to go out there and he's going to bang 20 and 30-year-olds. And he's going to keep them as girlfriends. And he's going to be the king of Memphis. And he's going to be around town. And he's going to fucking wrestle in matches. And he'll probably bleed. And he'll punch you in the face and take the strap down. And he's the king. He was just on Raw. He was on Raw 30 doing commentary. Jerry is living in the moment at all times. And I honestly, honest to God, I think that's why he's been so lucky. Is because the man he's still living life. He's not ready to hang up the boots yet. And I think, those of us who have had grandparents or just anybody elderly in your life, when you've watched people either get sick or they slow down, you can kind of see that happen. But you look at a guy like Jerry Lawler, or even listening to one of Chris Jericho's rants. I think it was on that Marc Maron podcast. They were talking about Mick Jagger, how he's in his 70s, and like how he's still out there kicking ass on stage, and they're commenting like, no, he's not just good for a old guy. He's just good still. He's Mick fucking Jagger. He's out there being a rock star. And it's the same thing with Jerry Lawler. He's a wrestler. He's out there kicking ass. Ric Flair's trying to do the same thing. These guys are still in the fight because they still got fight left in them, and that's important. I think that's very important. But, look, man, we are going to run out of lives at some point, too, Jerry is getting up there, and anytime stuff like this happens, it is scary. So it looks like he's going to make a full recovery and be just fine, and thank God for that. Still say an extra prayer because you never know how things work out in this crazy-ass world. But it looks like we're going to have the King around for a little bit longer, and I hope he does make a full recovery, and I hope he does get back into the ring still. Look, anybody that says, these old guys shouldn't do the fucking... let them fucking hang, as long as they're not going to have a heart attack in the middle of the ring, which is certainly possible with like a guy like Ric Flair who's on a pacemaker. Or I guess, look, Jerry Lawler had one too, so... I guess I get it. I understand. But at the same time, they're not out there doing Hurricane Ranas and shit necessarily. Jerry Lawler match has always kind of basically been punches and headlocks and really basic character work and more of the gaga than it has been, actual technical prowess, if you know what I'm saying. So anyway, thoughts and prayers to Jerry the King Lawler. Glad he's going to be doing okay. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next. Adrenaline in my soul. Cody Rhodes was on Inside the Ropes this week doing an interview all about his big road to WrestleMania. Cody Rhodes winning the Royal Rumble, of course, and on his way, punched his ticket. I fucking hate this. I thought we were done with the Vince-isms. Punch my ticket. I'm punching my ticket. How many times have we heard that? In the sign pointing to the sign. It's getting old, man. It's getting old, man. Thought that went out the door with the old man, but I guess not. But hey, maybe he's still around booking shit and we just don't know. Either way, Cody Rhodes seems to be in the main event of WrestleMania with Roman Reigns, but there's a problem with that. Cody Rhodes, as ready as people are to see him win the main event of WrestleMania and finish that big story that he had with Dusty Rhodes. His dad, the belt that he could never, ever win. The belt he came so close, he was holding it in Madison Square Garden, but he never actually got to keep it. So close it was sitting on the mantle when Cody was growing up, but Dusty never had it to his name. Can Cody fulfill that dream for the dream? Or... we got a Sami Zayn on our hands here. Sami Zayn's been tearing it up all year and quite frankly is the biggest babyface in the company. And, if you were to put the two head to head, who do you want to see win? Who's bigger? Who's better? Cody or Sami? I think you'd get a damn near 50-50. I really do. I think people love both of these stories. So it was a really great question that was asked by Inside the Ropes on this interview to Cody Rhodes. How does he feel about this Sami Zayn character coming on up while you were away on the injured list? And what are we to do with this situation? These two big baby faces ready to beat Roman. How's that going to play out? Here's what Cody had to say. Check out this clip.
You obviously squarely focused on Roman, but there's so much going on. Have you been acutely aware, I guess, of the fan clamor for Sami kind of running parallel with everyone wanting to see you win the title that your dad never did? Like, they're both stories that fans love. But man, like in that interim where you were injured, Sami's just kind of got red hot.
I was fully expecting for all these things to converge, and still I fully expect for all these things to converge, just because we have these wonderful options. And with all the respect in the world to one of the GOATs, The Rock, it looks like the options that we have here within the roster are even better because of the stories that are happening. One story about finishing something that happened in 1978, 7 years before I was even born, and wrapping that up. Another story about, the tragedy of being welcomed into the bloodline, and then as you saw, what unfolds. I think with the amount of time between now and WrestleMania, it's important that I keep my eyes fixed squarely on WrestleMania and squarely on wrestling for the WWE Undisputed Championship. And I think you hinted at it, and maybe this is the case. That might not be against Roman Reigns.
I think it plays out, as I've said before on the show here, that Sami falls short at Elimination Chamber, and then maybe Jey Uso comes back and costs Sami Zayn the match, and then that leads to Sami and Kevin. Kevin comes out to save Sami while he's getting the beat down, and it builds to Sami and Kevin versus the Usos at WrestleMania. Maybe the Usos have Solo in their corner, so maybe Sami and Kevin have like a mystery guy in their corner if they really want to go that extra step there. But I think that's exactly how this plays out. I don't think Sami gets to the main event of WrestleMania versus Roman. Now, if there was no Cody Rhodes in place, I think this is where you would have to go with this. I think you don't do it at the Chamber. I think Sami would have had to win the Royal Rumble. But I don't think that there's this pushback. They were smart to keep Sami out of the Rumble, by the way. If they would have put him in there and then he would have got tossed out, that could have been a backlash. Triple H was smart enough to realize that, because it's happened in the past with the Daniel Bryan that they keep comparing it to. Is a great example of somebody that was just getting over at WrestleMania time, man. And like, no matter who you try to push down our throats, that's not our guy. This is our guy, and we're going to push back. But it doesn't seem to be affecting Cody, at least not yet. If Sami gets over bigger and somehow the fans start to get bored with Cody's act and turn on him a little bit, then maybe things change a little bit. But I'd say for now, they're on a good pace to tell one story that culminates at Elimination Chamber, essentially, and then kind of wraps up and finishes at WrestleMania. Look, we've seen this in history from time to time, right? The bigger thing happens. Look at Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper, where they wrestled at what was it, the War to settle the score or whatever in Madison Square Garden, and they had their big beef there, and it was the one-on-one match that led to a later tag team match at WrestleMania, which I thought was the lesser of the two matches. Bigger star power, but Hulk Hogan versus Piper has a much more marquee, main event. But WrestleMania, anyway, I digress. I don't know why I'm going down that random ass sidebar. It was all to say that, it's going to come to a head between Roman and Sami at Elimination Chamber, and then we'll see the tag match with the Usos at Mania. Likely to happen that way. I don't know, but hopefully Cody doesn't start to, because look, I love what Cody's doing, and I will agree that his promo with Heyman last week, probably the best, one of the best promos in many years that's been on WWE TV. It's easy to have recency bias with some of these, so I don't want to overinflatio it, but overly fillet it, if you will. But it was very, very good. But Cody, I think these WWE fans, did AEW fans turn on Cody because he was too much of a WWE-esque guy and he's just a better fit in WWE, which is absolutely one way to look at it. He's got that very superstar presence. But on the other hand, did they turn on Cody because Cody gets to be a bit much sometimes? If we go week after, like, look, that was one of the best promos ever, right? Great promo last week, but how much of the adrenaline in my soul twice an episode sometimes, and Cody's just that baby face, and I think, at some point people might start to see through that. As long as they can get past and through WrestleMania with that, I think it's an incredible story that they're telling that culminates with a huge baby face crying, holding the belt, and if we're lucky, we get the Winged Eagle back and he gets a little bit of a run. But I don't see it getting much past 2023 before Cody is a heel, because I think the crowd is going to turn on him again, because he's Cody Rhodes, as great as he is as portraying that superstar. It is a little bit of a one-trick pony, and fans will get, he's got the obnoxious amount of pyro, and he milks the whole crowd, and I think after a while, the fans see enough of that, they're going to want a little bit more, and they're going to start to not react the way Cody likes them, and as long as they can take that and turn with that, you can see it, starting to wear away at Cody, and he eventually turns heel. But that's my prediction for the whole thing. But this could go any number of ways. Certainly, maybe we could see a triple threat. We could see Sami win the title and he faces Cody. We could see somehow Cody's out of the WrestleMania match and it's Sami versus Roman there. Maybe Roman defends the title once each night. Who knows? This could go any number of ways, but we shall see how it plays out. What are your thoughts, though, as of watching this? How do you think this will play out? Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. And Jesus Christ, what a storyline. Hey, what a bunch of storylines. WWE's on a roll right now. That's it. That's all I got for you this week. Hopefully I do not delete this one, because I am not recording this shit again. It was so dumb last week. I was cleaning out my folder, of like all the saved like Raw recordings, not Monday Night Raw, but you record the file, and then I'll after I edit it and add the graphics in and that kind of stuff, then once it's all processed and uploaded, I don't really need those old raw files anymore. They take up a lot of space. So I was clearing out some of the back catalog ones, and I fucking accidentally deleted the one I had just recorded. So fuck me, right? And I almost didn't do the show last week at all because of that. I got very pissy and I was crabby, and it was wasted time, because it's not just the time recording, which took me about 2 hours last week too. But then it's the thumbnails too. I put a lot of work into doing the thumbnails before I even record. I know what I'm going to record, what topics I'm going to cover, because I'm recapping the week, right? So as something happens in a podcast, I know, so I can kind of prepare ahead of time. And the thumbnails take a lot of time. So I put a lot of work into that show, and then I was just pissy, and I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm out. Because you also can't go into it with a bad attitude. And that's something I'm learning to work through still, that I'm not great at. It's part of being a professional, is that you got to be able to work in all conditions, right? Like if I get to a point where I'm like, I'm big enough, like some of these other big podcasters, YouTubers or whatever, they got their show every week, sometimes every night, multiple nights a week, depending on what their gimmick is, what they're doing. They can't always be in a good mood, right? So, just because I'm pissy doesn't mean like I get to skip a show necessarily. And I gotta be able to, but the problem with that becomes I don't hide my feelings well. I'm not an actor. So I can't come on here and be like, hey, what's up? Happy everybody. And I'm like, God fucking damn it. I just spent hours doing this and I scrapped it all. And, I come on here and I'm a little bit pissy. So last week I was probably a little bit pissy and maybe didn't put as much oomph into some of the stuff as I might have the first pass. So I do apologize for that. But I thought it better to do a show still than not do one, but it does take a little of the authenticity out of it too, because when you're reacting to things, you're trying to give your honest off the cuff thoughts on stuff. Sometimes you get on a good little rant, or you get a good little thought flow going, and sometimes you don't, it spits and sputters or whatever, but trying to recreate that or kind of get back to that same mind frame, especially after you're just, you're meh. And I took a couple hours off in between, I actually went and hung out with my kids for a little bit and came back and was in a better mood. And I was like, all right, well, let's try to bang this out here. So, hopefully that never happens again. I'm going to be much more careful, lesson learned, but these are the things that happened. And, I'm dedicated to keep bringing you shows each and every week. I am endlessly thankful and grateful to have you guys listening, watching, whatever you're doing. I'm just going to keep it rolling. I am creeping up closer to that 1,000 subscribers so I can monetize on YouTube. That is the goal. That's what I'm pushing for. So I'm going to keep pushing you guys. You know, if you like it and you're not subscribed on YouTube, please subscribe on YouTube. I would fucking love it. It would make me so happy. Once I get to that monetized status, then I can do more things. You know, I can dedicate more time to this, to do more things. I got some cool stuff planned, and I apologize. I know I mentioned it a couple weeks ago. I had some fun stuff that I wanted to start doing the wrestling area, but one of them is very graphically intense. I guess I put more work into it than I need to, but I want it to look cool, right? So part of it's just graphically whatever, you know, like the thumbnails are part of the graphics of the video and stuff. It's going to take a little bit of work, but I got a couple wrestling related YouTube video projects that I definitely want to get to this year. You know, and just life and stuff. It's my kid's birthday this weekend too. So all things in balance, you know, and I got to work the shoot job, brother. I hate that shit. So it's like, I do what I can for you guys, and I'm endlessly grateful that you're here to support me, and I'm just going to keep doing what I can and cranking them out for you guys. So that's my plug. Subscribe on YouTube, like, follow, subscribe, all that shit too. Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, if you're on any of those. But if nothing else, YouTube, man, throw me a bone there. That's all I got for you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Peace, love, and pizza. Have an amazing Super Bowl weekend. I am your boy, Seth Grimes, and this has been the Pro Wrestling Podcast. You notice Brock Lesnar has like a southern accent now? Where'd that come from? Is he faking that? You think he's faking that? You know how they call it like black accent when you fake a black accent? What do they call country when you fake a country? Country. Faking a country accent. It's the Pro Wrestling Podcast.